दोस्तों, Trump has started his second tenure on the 20th of January 2025, and he has been shooting off executive orders on climate, energy, and also to bring peace in this world and not toppling of governments. He has tried to stop the Ukraine-Russia war by bringing Russia onto the peace table. Also, he has been selling off gold cards to get more mullah into the US. There are a lot of world leaders who are getting invited. Our Modi got a 5-star treatment when he visited US for his meeting with Trump.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to have Prime Minister Modi of India. He is a great friend of mine for a long time. We've had a wonderful relationship.
But then Zelensky got a bollocking.
Russia. I don't want a ceasefire. You don't have the cards right now. You're gambling with World War III. He's not speaking loudly. Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
And also his dress code was ridiculed by the press and the US citizens.
Wait, my second question for President Zelensky. Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're the highest level in this country's office and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if do you own a suit?
And when Zelensky was thrown out of the White House without a presser and also not given lunch, when he huffed out, the European Union started garnering support for him. And there was a meeting with the European leaders with Zelensky as the center of attraction. So in this whole political scenario, who is to gain and who has what to take? But before we move on, मेरा आप लोगों से एक ही गुजारिश है कि आप हमारे NGO उमा ड्रीम फाउंडेशन में वॉलंटियर कीजिए, which has a tagline of right to education for the underprivileged, or please purchase something from our e-com site SONAJURIARTS, which showcases the handicraft of West Bengal, because every purchase goes towards making the life of these artisans comfortable. So आगे बढ़ते हुए इस पूरा जो geopolitical scenario of Russia and Ukraine, what has been happening? Before Zelensky, Ukraine had pro-Russian ties with Poroshenko, who was the Ukrainian premier. He had pro-Russian inklings and he was overthrown by Zelensky with 72.3% popular vote-ons. And this was instigated by the NATO or the US with a carrot of Ukraine getting NATO membership, until it gets NATO membership and it can show its eyes to Russia. But now with the scenario changing, Ukraine is left in the lurch and US trying to back out of NATO and not giving it support. Europe is trying to garner support for Ukraine to sustain the war against Russia. So there is a saying that to be an enemy of the US is okay, but to be a friend is fatal, and that has happened with Ukraine. Because when Zelensky was attacked by Russia, Biden gave it support unilaterally so that it could sustain the war and pressurized NATO and the European countries to go after Ukraine. And the policy at that time was do not attack but defend. The Russian troops were getting into Ukraine, but the policy was only that Ukraine should try to defend its territory. So recently in the meeting between Zelensky, Trump and Vance, Trump made it very clear that Obama and Biden gave him nothing. They only gave him sheets and an instigation to fight, while he says that Trump gave him javelins. So what does that mean? And when the complete discussion turned into a fiasco and an heated argument, complete mineral deal, which was on the verge of getting fructified, fell through. And here, with US trying to pull out of NATO or pull its support out of NATO, what is it gaining? Like I have brought out earlier also, Trump is cozying up to Putin so that it can isolate it from China and North Korea, who are supporting Russia in the war. And in cozying up to Russia, it isolates or distances Russia from China so that China, which is the main competitor of US today to become a superpower, can be curbed. But in this whole ball game, Putin has played the role of strategic patience. Putin never wanted any territory in Ukraine. It wanted to just break up Ukraine. And three factors that he was looking for is denazifying of Ukraine, demilitarization of Ukraine, and a neutral Ukraine without its inkling towards NATO. But then when the European countries started supporting Ukraine for the war, there were sanctions put onto Russia to stranglehold it. But then Russian economy was not weak and Putin pulled on through it. The West thought that Russia would fall through, its economy would shatter out. But in the whole scenario of the war, it was seen that the GDP of Russia grew by 4%, while that of the NATO countries or the G7 countries got on to increased by only 1.7%. While Biden said the ruble would turn into rubble, the ruble did not fall much, and $1 is to 85 rubles only fell to $1 to 88 rubles, which is hardly a change. And the NATO countries thought that by putting this sanction, it would isolate Russia. Did not expect Russia to hold on so much against the NATO unbuilt. But then the Russian military proved itself, though a lot of its tactical plans and tactical methods of fighting a battle were exposed, with its weaknesses coming out into the front. And then comes the isolation of Russia. Russia did not get isolated, but North Korea and China also supported the battle, and Russia hosted a meeting of the African nations and BRICS from Brazil, Russia, India, China grew to about 10 countries, with UAE and other nations joining its folds. And Russia was smart enough that it kept delaying the battle tactics and kept giving nuclear threats, because it knew NATO countries were supplying only those weapons which could not do long strike into Russia. So this was one of the pluses which Putin played on. And the European countries, while supporting Ukraine, lost out its economy, and they were into economic doldrums with energy prices rising, inflation going up, cost of food and fertilizers going up, and one major issue which goes in favor of Putin is that Russia is not a democratic country, and Putin will stay in power till he wants, while the European countries and US are a democratic country and the citizens can change their leader when they want or after every 5 years. So Putin, like I said, kept on having strategic patience, and then arrived Trump, who wants to bring Russia onto the peace table and also has shown it will move out of NATO because it has spent about more than $200 billion in aid to Ukraine. So if US moves out, like Germany has said that it will try to militarize itself so that it does not need US for help, or support that the other countries of the European Union are giving to Ukraine. So how do the NATO countries and Russia balance out in the arms game, so that if there is a confrontation between the European nations and Russia, it is not known that who will win, but then the balance is this: the total military persons of NATO are 76 lakhs 28,782, while that of Russia 35 lakhs 70,000. Active soldiers are 33 lakhs 90,797, while Russia has about 13 lakhs 20,000 active troops. Reserve forces of NATO are 34 lakhs 40,165, and Russia has about 20 lakh reserve forces, and paramilitary units of NATO are 7 lakh 97,820, while Russia has about 2 lakh 50,000. Total aircrafts of NATO are 22,308, while Russia has only 4,814. Fighters and interceptors of NATO are 3,275. Russia has 809 aircrafts only, while ground attack aircrafts in NATO are 1,195. Russia has 730. Transport aircrafts are NATO versus Russia are 1,493 to 453. Recce aircrafts are 931 to 148. Tanker aircrafts are 655 to 90. And choppers are 8,950 to 1547. Coming on to the ground combat vehicles, the main battle tanks are 11,390 to 14,777. Armored vehicles, NATO has 8,49,801 to Russia's 1,61,382. Special propelled artillery is 4637 to 6208. Towed artillery is 5909 to 8356, and special propelled rocket launchers are 1968 to 3065. Coming on to the naval forces, total military ships that NATO has are 2,258 to Russia 781. Destroyers are 95 to 14, while the frigates are 134 to 12. Corvettes are 57 to 83, while helicopter carriers are only 13 with NATO, while Russia has none. And NATO has 16 aircraft carriers, while Russia has 1. Submarine balance is 139 to 65. Patrol boats are 323 to 122. Minesweepers are 151 to 47. And the nuclear weapons, there is a big balance, with NATO having 5759 nuke heads to Russia having 5889 nuke heads. So this is where the difference can come in, because Russia falls behind with the Air Force, but the nuclear warheads are balanced out. So with all this unfolding out, let us see what happens in the future. So you can keep following my channel for updates and analysis on these kind of topics. And you can contact me on the number given below to know anything about life skills which can make you a more successful person. Jai Hind.